participation survey, which is a representative survey of South Africans aged 16 years and older. So that will set the scene. It will be probably about 10 or so choice examples from the fuller range of data that we have. It is a series, so we can look at trends over time. That will set the scene for what Samelo will talk about, which is what Mr. Nkoko was talking about, which was the more narrowly focused on youth who either plan to abstain in next year's election or who remain really uncertain about their decision to participate. And then Oluda will talk about a study called Your Voice, Your Choice, which is some particular research looking at some of these themes in a more qualitative way. Okay, really not going to spend much time on background and methodology. Just to say that why do we do this? I mean, the IEC has made a real commitment to being an evidence-based electoral management body. So it's got more than 20 years of representative data about the changing nature of voters and and the broader electorate and their predispositions. What they're really hoping to understand is really understand ahead of each election. So usually 6 to 8 months ahead of each, whether it be national and provincial or local government elections, look at people's interest in the electoral participation, their perceptions around what's going on in the country, what's going on in terms of their views on elections more narrowly, evaluate their intended voting behavior, assess their perceptions related to particular performance of different aspects of democratic life in the country, particularly those that we have found to have a strong bearing on turnout, and also to look at specific particular thematic areas of priority for the Commission. And that includes also the examining of specific needs of specific groups such as women, youth and persons with disabilities. Well, importantly as well is the Commission is committed to internal reflection and also understanding what the public thinks about them as an institution. So it includes also a lot of data related to those kind of evaluations. Just to say, I'm not going to go much into methodology. If you have questions, we can come back to it. Just say each round of this series, which is conducted by the HSRC, as I said, it's representative of those 16 years and older. It's represented provincially and geographic type, so rural, urban, within province as well. Each year we draw a random selection of 3,500 addresses. We do face-to-face interviewing. This recent round we fielded between August and the end of October, and we realized just over 3,000 respondents. The data is then weighted to be representative based on Stats SA's latest published mid-year population estimates. So let's jump into the numbers. I'm going to start off with a few slides around what the public thinks around issues about democratic performance. So I'm going to choose examples. This is perhaps the most powerful one, which is a trend that we've looked at for the last 20 years, which is how satisfied are South Africans with the basic functioning of democracy? If we go back to 2003, just ahead of NPE 2004, we see that 45% were satisfied with democracy at that point and 38% discontent. If we jump forward 5 years to just ahead of NPE 2009, there had been a slight reversal with 44% discontent and 36% content. Another 5-year interval on in 2013, that more negative view had risen to 51%. It stabilized, although it fluctuated, as you can see in between these 5-year cycles. By 2018, ahead of the 2019 election, it was in a similar kind of range, 46% discontent, 32% contented with democracy. The latest figures, as of a couple of months ago, from our fieldwork, show that 57% are dissatisfied with the functioning of democracy and only 28% satisfied. So on this particular indicator, in terms of understanding the pre-electoral mood, we're finding that this is the most negative position in terms of overall democratic evaluations we've seen ahead of an election to date. These numbers are probably going to be a bit complex to understand, but we asked sets of questions about different dimensions of democracy. And firstly, we asked them, and these are the blue bars, How important are these dimensions for democracy? From 0, not important at all, to 10, very, extremely important. And then the orange bars indicate to what extent does that dimension apply in South Africa today, characterize South African democracy. So we can look at that. You can see that for most of the blue bars, it ranges between 6.4 and the low 7s out of 10. So most of these dimensions are important, but let's look what they are. On the far left-hand side is elections in South Africa are free and fair. Politicians in South Africa listen to the people before making their decisions. Ruling parties in South Africa are punished in elections when they've performed poorly. Citizens in South Africa are able to take part in peaceful and legal protest action to express their discontent. In South Africa, everyone's free, and opposition parties in South Africa are free to criticize the government. So it's different kind of freedom, and also the character of electoral democracy. So the blue bars are relatively high. They're above the midpoint of 5. So people rate most of these as important. We can see there's a more variation on the orange bars. Most, apart from 2, get above 5, but we can see it's slightly more critical perspectives. The biggest difference is actually related to 2 dimensions, where they're both sitting at 3.9 out of 10. That's the politicians listen to the people before making decisions. So issues of voice, of accountability, those are getting quite harsh evaluations, and you see it carries through our subsequent presentations too. And that the sense of punishment based on poor performance. Are there consequences? Is there accountability for that poor performance? So the public's circumspect about that as well. So that's where we find the biggest gaps. This one's a bunch of numbers, so don't even try and read them. All I'm going to say is what it shows is for each dimension, the trends on each round of the voter participation survey over time. And just to say that we are seeing a decline in most of those evaluations in terms of the importance of those dimensions and the extent to which they apply in the country. And for most cases, this represents a worsening relative to the 2008 one, just ahead of NP 2019. This one's a very powerful graphic as well. This is trust in core institutions. We've got more we test, but I just chose these for example. So firstly, confidence in national government. So if you look at that first, sorry, it's on this side. Look at the first graph. This covers 1998 to 2023. And you can see that it fluctuated around, but after around about the mid-2000s, we started to see a clear pattern of progressive general decline. Yes, it fluctuated up and down in certain time points, but the general tendency has been downward. So in sort of around 2005, 70% said they vested their confidence in national government. As of late 23, it's down to 23%. So it gives you a sense of that scale of change. Just ahead of the 2019 election, that was stood at 33%. So there's been a 10% erosion in confidence relative to just before the last national and provincial election. Similar with Parliament, that very dramatic decline from around the mid-60s down to the 23 figure, which is 26%. Again, it's lower than we have seen relative to the last national and provincial election. Even political parties, which tend to get quite a harsh assessment by most of the public, have shown a downward trend. As of 23, it's down to 17% voicing confidence in political parties. And the same applies if we look at provincial government, local government, politicians. Those same tendencies coming through. Even the courts have shown quite significant stress. The last one is obviously the Electoral Commission, and even it has not been immune to this kind of general prevailing negativity amongst the public related to whether they can vest their confidence in these institutions. Just to say about that, it doesn't mean that the IEC is doing a bad job necessarily. And what we find from the surveys we do on election day about the members of the electorate that actually turn out to vote